I love meeting people in different countries and different cultures. And I think that books are a wonderful way of creating awareness of similarities and differences and respect for other people.
A few months ago, we were holding one of our many lunchtime meetings in the library when Rev Kath came across a children's book displayed on the bookshelf. It was titled Stepping Stones, How Fitting. Written by Canadian author Margriet Ruurs, Stepping Stones tells the story of a family's experiences of war in Syria. The book is centered around the incredible stone artworks of Syrian artist Nizar Ali Badr. Margriet's book has reached across the world. In fact, I had seen this book before, in Year 6, and it was quite probably my first ever emotional encounter with the concept of refugees. Not only has Margriet raised tens of thousands of dollars for the cause of refugee advocacy and resettlement through her book, but more importantly, she has connected communities across the world and aided people to take small steps towards understanding and empathizing with the plight of asylum seekers. Her storytelling and campaigning has allowed the humanity of refugees to speak louder than politics. All the way from Canada, Margriet has taken the effort to pre-record and share with us the inspiration for her book and to detail the importance of the story it shares, as well as the slightly more positive side of Facebook.
Hello, friends in Dirrum, Australia. And thank you, David Stocks, for inviting me to talk a little bit about my books, which is appropriately called Stepping Stones. I hope that you're having a wonderful gathering of creating awareness, and that your conference, your festival is going really well. I'm coming to you from Canada, the west coast of Canada. I love Australians. When my husband retired, we took 3 months, rented a camper and drove the entire circumference of the country, spent time in the outback and Kakadu and Perth and everywhere in between. So my heart is with you, and I'm so thrilled to be able to share some of my books. So I'm a Canadian children's book writer. I was born in the Netherlands, that's why I have an accent. And I have about 40 books for children and educators that I wrote. And one of them is called Stepping Stones. So that's the one I'll be focusing on. But I wanted to show you, I write a lot of global books because I travel a lot. And I love meeting people in different countries and different cultures. And I think that books are a wonderful way of creating awareness of similarities and differences and respect for other people. So this book shows how birthdays are celebrated in many different cultures around the world. And one of the countries is Australia. I have a friend here in Canada who's from Norfolk Island. And so she told me about customs there, and I was able to use that in a book and share that with children all over the world. That book is part of a series. This one is about families around the world. I was able to visit a family in the Gobi Desert, a family in Kenya. And so the book shows how really we're all the same, how we all want the same things for our children: safety, food, a roof over our heads, security, and how we are also different and how we should celebrate those differences of clothing and language and food and customs and traditions and religions and everything else that makes the human race so interesting. So I'm thrilled to tell you about this particular book. And it's so fun to know that you have a whole festival called Stepping Stones, because hopefully this book also is a stepping stone to creating awareness and understanding. When a writer wants to write, the very first thing that you need is a good idea. Which idea is going to be strong enough that it can be an entire story. Does it have a plot? Does it have an ending? Is it interesting? Is it something other people want to know about? So as a writer, I'm always looking in newspapers or elsewhere, listening for ideas. And then often that idea will stay with me for many years before it sprouts into a manuscript for a picture book or a novel or a nonfiction book. In my case, usually a book for children. So I grew up in the Netherlands after the Second World War. I've, thank God, never lived during a war, never lived in a country that was directly in war when I was there. So I've been very, very fortunate in my place in the world and in my generation to have never experienced the war. And hopefully that's similar for many of you, but I'm sure not all of you. So one day I was looking online, of all places. I was on Facebook. One day I noticed this image. I had a good look because I thought I can see a man carrying things and worries and a woman carrying a child, and they're walking. And I thought that is probably an image about the war in Syria. Then I thought, how is that picture made? Is that made of stones? So I had a good look, and I noticed that the stone in the bottom corner was autographed, just like a painter signs his art. So I copied that name into Google and I searched for it, and there was nothing on the entire World Wide Web with that name except a Facebook page. His name is Nizar Ali Badr. On Facebook, I could see that he was an artist working with stones and that he lived in Syria. So when I checked his photos, I saw like 2,000 photos of similar rock art. I thought, wouldn't kids love to see art made from stones? That is so appealing. So I sent off a Facebook message saying, hello Nizar, my name is Margriet, I live in Canada, I write books for kids. Would you allow me, I know I couldn't just borrow his photos, that would be stealing. I said, could I get permission to use your photos to see, first of all, if I could write the textical wisdom, and then if I could find a publisher in North America, you would get paid as an illustrator. So I was very excited about that prospect, and I hit send on my message in English, and I couldn't wait to hear back from this person in Syria, and I didn't hear back. I waited a week, and then I copied it and sent it again, and I didn't hear back. And I sent it like 10 times, and then I finally thought, no, he's somehow not getting my messages. But when I looked at his Facebook page, I realized that nothing was in English, and that it had to probably be in Arabic. So I asked a teacher friend who speaks English and Arabic to translate my question. She did. I pasted that in a message. I sent it in Arabic, and I didn't hear back from this person in Syria. So it took me about 3 months to figure out, with the help of a friend in Pakistan who speaks English and Arabic and who is also an educator, I figured out that Nizar had the maximum number of followers allowed on Facebook, and that if I wasn't following our friend, my messages were not reaching him. So in a way, that was good news, because I knew he wasn't just ignoring or he wasn't interested. He simply wasn't getting my messages. So after 3 months of trying, my friend in Pakistan located a person in Syria in the same place who knew Nizar Ali Badr and who spoke English and who was able to convey my question to him. And one day I did receive a message that said, yes, please use what you like. I'm very excited about this prospect. So during those 3 months, I didn't just sit and wait and twiddle my thumbs. I actually did borrow pictures of his Facebook page that I put in a certain order in which I felt they told me a story in pictures. I looked for that plot, for that storyline, not just interesting pictures. They have to tell a story in art. So once I found that story in his pictures, in his stone pictures, I wrote it. I sent it to a Canadian publisher who I knew was very concerned with the welfare of children and the plight of refugees. The publishers took one look at the text and the art and immediately said, yes, we will publish this. It has to come out now, while the war in Syria was in everybody's living room and while people were very concerned with the welfare of refugees reaching a lot of countries in Europe and in North America, and maybe in Australia the same. So the publisher did an amazing job in publishing this book very, very quickly. They also decided something very smart, and that was to publish the book in English, but also in Arabic, so that people from Arabic countries who were often the refugees could also read it. So these are the stepping stones that hopefully have led to a bridge of understanding and bridging differences between people. Here's a photo in the book of Nizar working in Syria, where he lives close to the beach in Latakia. He lives in a safer area that is very much affected by war, but he's relatively safe in the area where he lives. He has no money for glue. He has no money for paint. But he does walk to the beach and collects rocks. And he is an amazing artist coming from generations of carvers and stoneworkers. And so he has this talent, this gift in his fingertips, where he lays the rocks to tell stories. He doesn't glue them together. He does lay them on wood or on cloth until he has images. So I took the images and wrote the words. And the story starts off by saying that life in Rama's village was normal. She would wake up when the rooster crowed. She would play with her brother. She would go to the market with her mother and watch her grandfather go fishing as he brought home fish for dinner. But one day a war started in her country and things were not going well. And at first Rama didn't mind because she had her family. But soon her friends and their families started to leave. A river of strangers in search of a place to be free, to live and love and laugh again, in search of a place where bombs did not fall, where people did not die on their way to market, a river of people in search of peace. And so soon Rama's father said, it's time for us to join that river of people, time to leave all that we know. That night I lay in bed and cried because I knew I would never again hear the crow of the rooster, the creak of the gate, the bleat of our goat. I lay awake and listened to the wind, wondering if the moon rises the same way in other places. So Rama and her family walk and walk and walk. Rama says, my feet felt like the stones on which we walked. And when they reached the end of the land, they had to cross the sea. Not everyone made it. They planted flowers in memory of those who didn't. But Rama and her family were the lucky ones. They made it to a new shore where Rama says, I don't know the words that these people are speaking, but their smiles and their outstretched arms tell me that we are welcome. Welcome to stay and live for a while. We have a new home now, a home with new sounds and smells, with smiles and people who help. Will this always be home, or will we go back one day? So Rama and her family are the lucky ones that were welcomed to live in safety for as long as they needed. This book has received amazing accolades. The Pope has selected it as one of his favorite texts that demonstrate his message of humanity to young people. It's been translated in many, many different languages in different shapes and sizes all over the world. And the interesting thing that started to happen when the story went out there on its own was that indeed it served as a stepping stone, because children in Vietnam started writing me saying, this is our story, this is what happened to us. And a refugee from Syria, a grown man, cried when he read it, and he said to me, how did you know that this is what it was like? And I didn't realize until later that I knew, because my parents grew up in the Netherlands in World War II, and I grew up with their stories of homes being bombed and them having to flee and take only what they could carry. So I'm afraid that this is a universal story, and I think it's important for my grandchildren to realize that we need to help others, that we need to be there to provide a safe haven when we have one, and to share that. Refugees have brought so much value and quality to life in Canada, in the Netherlands. They've brought skills, and they have added so much to their new communities that I think we all have things to be grateful for on both sides. So I hope that you will have a chance to read this book and to consider Nizar's art as a stepping stone to understanding and appreciating other cultures. And I wish you a wonderful continuation of your festival. And thank you for taking the time to listening and sharing my book. Bye.